Hey everybody, let's take a look at the Islander Calabro GMT World Time Automatic. It's my first Islander watch. I've wanted one of these for a very long time, but just the right watch hadn't come around. Until I saw this one, I said, yep, that's a perfect first Islander watch for me. I really like the idea of a world time bezel, and I'll get into that on this watch. It's the ISL 190. I ordered this as part of the pre-order. I'm on their mailing list, and I was able to get it pretty early with a little discount. So definitely, if you like Islander watches, definitely sign up for them because you might get special advanced deals quite like that. I want to go into its design and then its build quality, and I also want to go over what exactly a world time bezel is. It's a GMT World Timer Day. I have some other watches to compare it with in this kind of little overview that I'm doing here. For this video, I'm wearing the watch that I kind of gave a review on last week. This is the recently released Timex 1972 World Time reissue, and I went through what I liked and didn't like about that, and I think they're quite related. This is also a world time bezel, but it's a 12-hour. This is a GMT movement, so it has 4 hands, and a very interesting way to calculate any time in the world, which I'll get to. I think design-wise they did a great job, but I do think there's one big flaw about this, and I don't think it's a nitpick, actually. So first things first, the design. They released this in 4 different colors. There's an all-green version, which everyone seems to like. There's a black with yellow accents, which is that's probably the one I would get if I had a smaller watch collection. There's a Pogue-colored one, which, if you like the Pogue, you're going to like that watch. Otherwise, I'm going to say you're not. It's kind of out there. But for me, I love white dials, and I think blue and white is an excellent combination. What I especially like on this watch is not only do they call out London, or GMT time, but they call out their home, Long Island. That's something really neat. I have never seen any brand call out their home time quite like that on a world timer bezel. I don't know. I found that pretty clever. And I really do like this color combination. I will say the other color combinations, the accent color that they use here, they colored the GMT hand that same color, and I do wish they did that on this watch. If that were orange, it would make it very clear that, you know, there's a logical grouping between that hand and that marker here. And I'll get to how you use it, but first, I do want to point out the dial on this. Let's see if we can zoom in a little on here. You see, I really like the stark white dial. There's a blue, like a horizon line, and you see the date. It kind of has a targeting window. It's almost like a cockpit in a plane, and I feel like that's what they were trying to get on this. Calabro, everything that Islander does is named after locations on Long Island. Calabro is the name of an airport, I believe, or on Long Island. And I think that's supposed to resemble one of those flight displays, whatever they're called, and that's sort of like a targeting thing. I quite like it. I think the indices are very easy to read. The chapter ring there has the 24-hour time that you can use with this. You could use this as a GMT watch where you set this time here to the time of London, which I believe I've done here. Yeah. And because when you're flying a plane, everyone uses GMT time just to keep things consistent. So I do really like the way they've done this. I also should say the older Islander watches just had the logo, and they looked a little too stark for me. But ever since they added the Islander text there, I think it's looked really good. Yeah, I really like that glossy blue coloring. It's pretty cool. Now this watch as the whole is definitely a dive watch, which I should say makes a lot of sense for a travel watch. If presumably you'll use a watch like this to travel, you have the GMT hand, but usually when you're traveling is when you're swimming a lot. So let's zoom back out again on this. Let's take it off. I didn't size it yet, but everything about this watch screams dive watch, and that's mostly good, but my issue with it actually does descend from that. We have this milled clasp. We have this really nice H-link bracelet. It's I should say H-links is probably my favorite type of bracelet on a watch. I really like it. It's a really good size. I thought this was a 40 millimeter. Let's just verify that. Yep, I'm getting 40.5 millimeter. So yeah, 40 millimeter watch. It has some pretty good thickness to it. That's typical, and dive watches are usually a little extra thicker. The GMT movement adds some thickness. So 14 millimeter, not exceptionally thick, but on the thicker side. We have the signed screw down crown. I think it feels really good. Winding that is really nice. This uses the new NH34 movement that is one of two recent movements that is bringing GMT down to the micro brand world, small watchmakers, that I believe debuted in this watch. I didn't have this on my channel yet. I should make a video on it. But these use the same movement. They are collar GMTs, so you can manipulate the crown to move the 24-hour bezel. I should do that just so you see. Pop it out one position, and all right, down changes the date, and up changes the 24-hour hand. We'll go back to, I think it was there. So everything about this watch screams dive watch. It is definitely built really well. We see a really cool, it's not even laser etched, it's engraved. And so it has a really nice texture to it. Let's zoom in on that. Really cool. 200 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, Islander. You got the sun with the Islander logo there. Yeah, milled, solid end links, solid links. If there's any gripe to the bracelet, it's that this clasp, I think I've seen it on every micro brand watch I've ever come across. The inside is, the inner is milled, but the outer is folded. And I like it. It feels like the weak point because the rest of this bracelet is just so darn nice. So that's the design and the build quality of this watch, which I think is exceptional. But I do want to get into how this bezel works. By the way, the action of this bezel I think feels fantastic. I wouldn't mind just getting an Islander dive watch that has that. So the way this works, you set the GMT hand. Really, you can set it anywhere. You can set it to your local time, but typically you set this to GMT, which I believe it's set to now. That's London. And London on the dial has this orange indicator, and you line up with it. And now you know the time everywhere in the world. So in Hong Kong, it's 24. That's midnight. It's 1 a.m. in Tokyo. It is 5 a.m. in Samoa, right? The one downside with these kind of bezels is that does not include like daylight saving time. I don't know where else in the world uses it. I know the UK has summertime. The United States has daylight saving time. Yeah, these numbers are oriented this way, but it's upside down on this. So the Azores, well, that's interesting. The Azores, it's the island nation, right? Is 15, so 3 o'clock. So I think that's pretty interesting. Now, the reason you don't see world time bezels that much, I've had a bunch of watches over the year. The only other world time bezel I've had is the Citizen, which I should also make a video on this. Kind of works the same way, where you line up whatever time you have set for the GMT hand, whether that's London or local, you line it up with this, and now you know the times for the rest of the world. But in contrast with this watch, which has the same movement, a GMT bezel lets you kind of set this every time you travel, every time you change a time zone, you move this one way or the other. And it works for one time zone, but at all times. So you set it once, and as long as you're not traveling, it's good. This kind of bezel inverts that. It works for all time zones, but only for one time, and that time is now. Which means that you set this, you kind of calculate what time it is everywhere in the world, but if you come back an hour later, it's inaccurate. You have to reset the bezel every time you look at your watch. If it's just 5 minutes, it's not a big deal. But let's say you check again in 2 hours, you have to update this bezel. And that's kind of the complaint I have with this watch. Time kind of goes this way. right? Time increases. So if you could have a watch that this thing would turn itself, that'd be awesome. That'd be a world timer. But this you have to calculate every single time you want to look at the time and calculate it. This bezel is unidirectional, and it's unidirectional in the wrong way. It goes this way, but it can't go clockwise. So right now, if I want to move London here, you know, I'm going to align that marker here. Great. Now I know London is approaching, 16, so 4 p.m. Great. I could calculate any other times, but if I come back an hour later, right, it's going to look something like this. I can't turn this just a little bit more clockwise. I have to turn it all the way around every single time. So typically, a world timer bezel is like this. It's bidirectional. Whether it's clicky or not doesn't really matter, but it really should be bidirectional. If it was unidirectional, it would actually be unidirectional in this direction, if that makes sense. So that's why I was clear to mention that this is a dive watch at heart, because you have 200 meters of water resist and screw down crown, a really awesome bracelet, a really nice milled everything. But I think it's repurposing that ratchety clicking mechanism in it, where it can turn this way counterclockwise, and it really should turn this way. It might be possible to remove this and remove that spring and turn into a friction bezel, but that's not always the case. So that's kind of my one gripe with this watch. I wish it didn't have a clicky bezel. It's a shame because it clicks really well, and I would love to have maybe just an Islander dive watch and see if they get that action everywhere. That's awesome. I did want to call out this watch right here. Remember what I said before, where if this bezel were to turn itself, that'd be the ideal, rather than having all time zones, but just at one time, or one time zones that works at all times. You would have a watch that works for all time zones the whole day. And that's a watch like this. This is a recent watch I just picked up. It's a world timer movement. That ring inside is constantly turning. That would be akin to turning this bezel continuously. So you always see all the times everywhere in the world. But that costs quite a bit more. I really should make a video on that as well. But for this watch, you can't really beat the price. The NH34 is a fantastic price. The build quality is fantastic. The list price of this is $329. I think it's awesome. But I really do wish it didn't have that clicky bezel, if that were removed. Or if it could click like this but do it clockwise, that would be awesome. Listen, it's not like you can't use it, but it's just every time you look at your watch, half an hour passes and you want to find out the time everywhere in the world, you're grabbing this and you're moving it 95% this way, because that hand's going to go this way and you're going to want to make small adjustments clockwise and you can't. Other than that, I should say I'm really impressed with the build quality. I love the design. I think that's a really fun summer watch. We'll close out with one last close-up shot. Really, really nice. I'll make it a little darker. Not that my camera auto adjusts for that, so. And we'll see what is the lume on here. Maybe I can adjust the exposure. Yes. That looks like what I'm seeing right now. And there we go. I think the lume on this is really, really nice. At night, it absolutely glows. You have the numerals lit up. You have all four hands lit up. And all indices other than the date lit up really, really well. And secret fun fact, I don't know if you can see it right there, the Islander logo, there we go, it has kind of a low glow lume. So unfortunately, with my current setup, that's not visible. But at night, that glows a little bit. It fades really quickly. But yeah, so that's my overview of the Islander Calabro GMT World Time. This is the ISL 190. And yeah, thank you very much. See you next time.